Today on the Big 3 in 30, Bill Belichick snubbed by the Hall of Fame.
Bill Belichick should have unanimously been voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
The Bills promote Joe Brady to head coach.
Brandon Beane and Joe Brady stay, and they both get promotions.
And the Broncos fire OC Joe Lombardi.
He has fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, which, in honest opinion, is very interesting considering they're buddies.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Bill Belichick has earned the reputation of best coach in NFL history, but the voters in Canton, Ohio yesterday decided he isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. How could the six-time Super Bowl champion miss out on the Hall? Nick Cattles wonders the same thing on Locked On Patriots.
This is absolutely stunning. Breaking news from ESPN just a little while ago, Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham reporting for ESPN. They wrote, Bill Belichick, the 8-time Super Bowl winning coach, is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. In voting earlier this month, Belichick fell short of the 40 out of 50 votes needed for induction to the Pro Football Hall of Fame during his first year of eligibility. Four sources with firsthand knowledge of the outcome told ESPN. Belichick received a call from a Hall representative last Friday afternoon with the news that he won't be inducted into the Hall in Canton, Ohio this summer. Several sources who spoke with the coach over the weekend described Belichick as, quote-unquote, puzzled and, quote, disappointed, unquote, by his inability to secure support from at least 80% of Hall committee members. When told that Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, Peter King, a 32-year Hall of Fame voter who didn't cast a ballot this year, said, holy bleep, oh bleep. The bleeps begin with F. I'm very, very surprised, unquote. King went on to say, quote, a lot of things happen in that room that are unexpected. And of course, this is a big surprise to me. Even Patrick Mahomes went to Twitter to react to this news. Patrick Mahomes posted insane ... Don't even understand how this could be possible. 80% of the vote. Bill Belichick couldn't get 80% of the vote. Bill Belichick should have unanimously been voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a first ballot coach. Unanimously, let alone 80%. Who are the 11, at least the 11, who are the 11 people that decided that Bill Belichick was unworthy of being a first ballot Hall of Fame coach? This is an absolute joke. It is shameful. It is embarrassing. It is downright ridiculous for anybody in that committee, even for the people who voted for Belichick. They should be embarrassed. They know it's ridiculous. This is a shameful process. This is a circus. There is nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, in the world of coaching football that deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer than Bill Belichick. There's no one on God's green earth. There's nobody before him. There's nobody during his time. There's nobody since he left the league. Yes, unceremoniously. But this is somebody who won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. 6. Outrageous. And not only that, Belichick, of course, also won 2 Super Bowls as an assistant coach in the league. A total of 8 rings, and you're not a first ballot Hall of Fame guy? Oh, and also his defensive game plan from the Super Bowl while with the Giants as the defensive coordinator, that is in the Hall of Fame. That sits in the Hall of Fame. The defensive game plan from Bill Belichick, the DC, made it to the Hall of Fame quicker than Bill Belichick as the head coach. That's insane. This should have been a no-brainer. This should have been the easiest vote in the history of this committee. If anybody actually argued against voting for Bill Belichick, they should have been thrown out of the room. They should have been shunned. They should have been told to walk out the door, not come back until they figure out what's right and what's wrong. This is just crazy. The head coach that is second all-time in wins, a record, including the playoffs, of 333 and 178. It's just patently absurd. Revoke memberships, kick people out. They should not have the right to ever vote again. That's how bad this is. And I understand he had Tom Brady. Every great coach has a great quarterback, or at least a very good quarterback. Every single one of these head coaches needed talent to win Super Bowls, needed talent to win football games. Bill Belichick is no different. It's crazy that somebody could win 8 Super Bowls and not be a first ballot guy. And don't talk to me about there's always next year. What's the difference, Nick, of him being voted in as a first ballot guy or voted in a year from now or 2 years from now? Don't give me the always next year. When you are a first ballot guy, that speaks volumes. That puts you at the very tippity top. That's the cream of the crop that we're talking about. When you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, it means you were the best of the best. And Bill Belichick is the best head coach that has ever done it. And the fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is a smack in the face to him. It is disrespectful. It is dismissive. It is, again, outright ridiculous. I would even say a trebuchet mockery on our hands. You get in as a first ballot person to any Hall of Fame because of the respect that you garner from your colleagues. It's a statement. It's a spotlight. It's highlighting the fact that, again, you're the best that's ever done it, or at least one of the best that has ever done it. In a class of a bunch of Hall of Fame people, well, Hall of Fame coaches and players, there's a line. Difference between Hall of Fame person and Hall of Fame coach or Hall of Fame player. In that room, in that collective, you are the guy that's at the top of the mountain. That's the difference. That's why you should be first ballot. That's why don't talk to me about 2027's induction ceremony. And God forbid something ever happened to Bill Belichick from this point until next year's induction ceremony, if he gets in next year, which he absolutely should, or, just get rid of the committee altogether. God forbid something would ever happen to him and he does not get his day in Canton. That would be tragic. This is a joke. How in the world did Bill Belichick not get in as a first ballot guy? What are the reasons why he doesn't get in? We have some info, some intel on that. But first, I want to get to a couple of your comments. Steven Grossberg, there has to be a way Goodell overrides this. Yeah? Nope. There's no way that he can override it. Let's not forget Roger Goodell works for the owners. It's not the other way around. And the owners, I don't think, care much. I don't think they're worried about Bill Belichick not making it in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. So Roger Goodell is going to sit there on his hands and watch all of this play out. Parker Conrad, NFL Hall of Fame committee is a joke. Could not agree more. Absolute joke. Elt 31987, while I agree, I can't help but think of the human factor. Someone who disagrees with Bill's off the field life and deciding not to vote for him. Again, this is not about the human being. It's not about the person. This is about your accomplishments in the NFL, what you did as a head coach. And if you let Bill's personality or who he is as a human being, if you let that affect your voting, you should not be voting. David McWork, I don't like Bill, but he is 100% a Hall of Famer. No doubt about it. I appreciate the comments. Keep sending them my way. So how in the world is Bill Belichick not a first ballot guy? Pettiness. Sore losers. Don Van Natta, Seth Wickersham of ESPN wrote, a source familiar with Belichick's thinking said, quote, politics kept him out. He doesn't believe this is a reflection on his accomplishments, unquote. Van Natta and Wickersham write, Multiple sources told ESPN that Spygate and Deflategate came up in deliberations among voters. A voter who spoke on condition of anonymity said that Bill Polian, an ardent Kraft supporter, Robert Kraft, of course, and former GM of the Buffalo Bills and Indianapolis Colts, told some voters he believed Belichick should, quote unquote, wait a year before induction as penance for Spygate. Commissioner Roger Goodell also fined the Patriots $50,000 and Belichick $250,000 at that time for Spygate. And of course, it cost the team a first-round pick. This is embarrassing. This is junior high. This is high school. Bill Polian should absolutely be embarrassed by what he said during these meetings and believing that Bill Belichick should not be voted in to the Hall of Fame because of Spygate. If you believe that Spygate or Deflategate is enough of a reason to not induct Bill Belichick into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot guy, then you should believe Bill Belichick doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame at all. If it's that serious, he should never get in. If you're truly angry about him, quote unquote, cheating the game, he should never be allowed in the Hall of Fame. It's utterly ridiculous to say, well, he deserves to wait a year because of Spygate. Wait a year? An arbitrary term thrown out there by Bill Polian? Bill Polian? I mean, what are we doing here? As if other head coaches haven't done sketchy stuff. As if other teams haven't done sketchy stuff. As if the Indianapolis Colts, by the way, have not done sketchy stuff. Hey, Bill Polian, how about pumping in fake noise through your speakers in your dome? How about some of the stuff about the heat inside the stadium at times? How about some of the rumors about the water that was being served by we've got all these controversies and conspiracies. Bill Polian and the Indianapolis Colts have done some things that have made a lot of people around the league wonder. But Bill Polian, the pettiness in holding this against Bill Belichick. You want to know why Bill Polian's upset? It's not because of Spygate. It's not because of Deflategate, which, by the way, we all know was a nothing burger and has been proven to be a nothing burger since the fraudulent investigation that was held. You want to know why Bill Polian's upset at Bill Belichick? It's because Bill Belichick's Patriots beat the bag out of Bill Polian's Colts. It's because if Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the Patriots never existed, Bill Polian and Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts would have won many more Super Bowls. That's why.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Bills interviewed plenty of candidates, but ended up hiring from within by promoting offensive coordinator Joe Brady to head coach. Locked On Bills host Joe Marino tells us what the hire means for Buffalo.
The Buffalo Bills have a new head coach, and it's Joe Brady, promoted from offensive coordinator to the 17th head coach in Buffalo Bills history. And so we are going to react to it on this episode. We'll start by getting into some of the vibes. Then I want to talk about reasons to be optimistic, and then, of course, reasons to be concerned. The Bills interviewed 9 candidates for this job, and the first one they interview gets the job in Joe Brady, an in-house promotion for Joe Brady. And My first thought in hearing this news was that the Bills are telling you loud and clear how much they believe Sean McDermott was the biggest reason why they couldn't get over the proverbial playoff wall. And we know all about how much the defense has struggled in those playoff elimination games. And Sean McDermott, obviously a defensive-minded coach, and that's very, very frustrating. Now, the offense has certainly had some opportunities as well that they couldn't capitalize on, but mostly I think you point at the defense. And so Sean McDermott's out, but Brandon Beane obviously stays. And not only does Joe Brady stay, he gets a promotion just like Brandon Beane. So Brandon Beane and Joe Brady stay, and they both get promotions. I think you can look at the history with Sean McDermott and those playoff games, and just generally considering that he's had 7 chances at playoff runs with Josh Allen and never even got to the Super Bowl, and realize that obviously a change at head coach was very much justified and something I completely understand. I know that a lot of people are going to call this a comfort hire for the Bills, and a lot of hope that with the Bills moving on from Sean McDermott, that you'd see a lot of evolution in the direction of the Bills. That was a hope from a lot of people. And in some ways, I was hopeful for that as well. And so, was this a comfort hire? Well, Albert Breer shared on X just minutes after the announcement came through. This is what he said, and I think there's a lot to it. He said a couple keys in the Bills' hire of Joe Brady. There was a head coach as CEO piece of every candidate's interview with Buffalo. Brady hit a home run on that. And Brady's promotion allows for scheme continuity and easy alignment with GM Brandon Beane, who made this call, and the scouts. So if you believe it is a comfort hire, then I think the Bills are guilty as charged. Now, we'll listen to the press conference. We'll see what everyone has to say about it. But this smells like a comfort hire, and it probably is. The question is that a problem? The Bills have had a lot of success, right? They've won a ton of games. They've won at least one playoff game every year for the last 6 seasons. And so while I feel like there's an urgency and a desire for an evolutionary hire, it's not like they needed to completely tear it down. Maybe you wish they would. But this isn't a team that's really loaded with the resources necessary for a full overhaul here. I also want to be careful to not assume that there's not evolution with Joe Brady, who's not Sean McDermott. He's not. I'm very curious to see what direction certain things go that gives us an idea of how much of the things that have frustrated us are on McDermott. And this is going to give you a pretty clear opportunity, because Joe Brady is now this team's head coach and not Sean McDermott. The other thing that I want to point out is, while I understand this is going to be an unpopular decision by the Bills amongst Bills Mafia, Joe Brady was very much a serious candidate in this cycle and has been for a few cycles. There were 10 vacancies. 6 of them interviewed Joe Brady, and he was a guy that got second interviews for several teams, including Baltimore. So it's not like the Bills just took somebody that wasn't regarded across the league as a potential head coach and made him their head coach. This is a serious candidate. So what's going to change, right? That's where I find myself very interested. What changes here? I'd assume quite a bit on the defense, right? Because you took the offensive coordinator, made him the head coach. You told us you like a lot about what's going on with the offense. You get rid of the defensive-minded head coach, and I would expect there to be some big-time changes on that side of the ball. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Bobby Babbitt stays as defensive coordinator. We're going to see where this goes, but it certainly feels like that Sean McDermott piece, the defense piece, has kind of been the bigger issue. And I'm curious to see what changes there are on that side of the ball and honestly how the offense evolves. But that post from Albert Breer about being the one who made the call and for this to allow for scheme continuity and easy alignment with the general manager and the scouts is pretty central, I think, to why they made this move. And so we'll see where it goes. As I've maintained throughout this entire process, I'm open-minded. I am open-minded. And there is no instant gratification coming for anybody right now in terms of who's right about this. So take it for what it is. Be aware of the pros, be aware of the cons, cling to those pros, and root for it to work out. There's no instant gratification coming. So we'll see where it goes. And obviously, there's a lot of intrigue in what happens from here.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting, from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Broncos made the AFC Championship game this season, but still decided to make a coaching change by firing offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi Tuesday. Sire Benninger and Cody Rourke explain the move on Locked On Broncos.
The Broncos and Sean Payton have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. We'll talk about maybe what led to this decision. Could the Broncos and Sean Payton be trying to convince Davis Webb to stay? And if Davis Webb ends up taking the Las Vegas Raiders job, could Zach Strief be another in-house option to be the OC by title? We'll break it all down here on today's episode of the show. Sarah, obviously some breaking news here today, just hours after Sean Payton met with all of us for his end-of-the-year press conference. No indication whatsoever of any potential staff changes, but after that, just 6 hours after the fact, Sean Payton has in fact made his first staff change. He has fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, which in honest opinion is very interesting considering they're buddies, but we all know Joe Lombardi didn't call the plays, didn't design the offense. He was just the OC by title. This was an interesting move here for the Broncos to make, all of that information considered.
Very, very interesting. Obviously, Joe and Sean go back to their days in New Orleans together. I guess I'm not sure if they go back further than that, Cody, but obviously he's been a longtime assistant and trusted, sort of offensive mind for Sean Payton to kind of have in that brain trust. We know that Sean has a number of guys, whether it's Pete Carmichael as well. They brought back Johnny Morton, the former pass game coordinator who was the OC in Detroit. They brought him back as a consultant for the playoffs. So Sean has his circle, right, of guys that he likes. And certainly you figure, okay, Joe Lombardi, he's kind of just going to be around. He's been around since 2023. But now the Broncos are at a point where, like you mentioned, they're going to have to recruit like Davis Webb to stay if they want to keep him. They're going to have to recruit potentially Zach Strief to stay if they want to end up keeping him. I know Strief hasn't gotten the head coaching love that Davis Webb has, but he's extremely and very highly valued inside that Broncos organization. We know that he's the assistant head coach. I don't know how many listeners realize that Zach Strief has the title of assistant head coach. He is extremely valued by this team and protected by them in terms of teams trying to poach him away. So the Broncos are well aware of that. Sean Payton is aware of that.
the thing that we hopefully will get a chance to talk about on this emergency episode of the show is what would the ramifications be, not to put the cart ahead of the horse, but if Davis Webb was hired as the new OC in title, would that come with responsibilities that we've never seen Sean Payton give to somebody else within his offensive structure?
I think that's a great question here, right? Because for Davis Webb, who is garnering strong head coaching interest from the Las Vegas Raiders, as we all know, no previous coordinator experience here in the NFL for him. So making the jump from being a position coach to being a head coach, that is kind of unprecedented in a sense of what we're seeing in today's NFL. Usually you see experienced coordinators, guys who've had success, usually get those jobs. And for Davis, he's a young guy. So for me to just see that as a possibility would be interesting. But it is worth noting here at this point in time with Davis, I think the initial impression was when the Broncos first hired him as the quarterback coach, they were going through the interview process and, they had the interview at the team facility. Davis Webb got in the taxi or the Uber. And then Sean Payton said, wait, why are we letting him leave the building? So they called him. They had the driver turn back around. He came on and signed a contract. Davis, I will tell you this, talking to offensive players, talking to quarterbacks, and even hearing it from Sean himself, he's such a bright young mind in terms of offensive innovation, his experiences. He's very detailed and prepared when it comes to scouting reports. That was one of the things that sold Sean on hiring him initially as a quarterback coach in the first place. And think about this. Davis Webb still had some offers to go be a quarterback or to sign on to a roster as a backup for several NFL teams at that point. It's not like he was out of the NFL. There was some serious interest, but he wanted to make the jump into coaching where he felt like he had more of a chance to make an impact here going forward. And you hear Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, Sam Ehlinger. You hear these guys talk about Davis Webb. He has been so valuable to the offense's growth, I would say, over time. Now, has Denver's offense been perfect? I think you and I can sit here and say, hey, they have their own issues that they must correct, including the run game, including better production from the receivers in the drop department. We'll obviously talk about that, I think, on tomorrow's episode of the show. But Davis has been a very big proponent, I'd say, of Bo Nix's growth here. And I'd say Bo has probably been his biggest advocate. So I'm with you, Sarah. That's the question we have to ask. With Joe Lombardi getting fired by Sean, who we know is the play caller, as the designer and the implementer of this offense here, if you do entice Davis Webb to stay on as offensive coordinator, is Sean Payton going to hand off the reins to him? I think from what we know, just what we've perceived about Sean, does that seem very likely to you? I don't think it does, but maybe Sean Payton is getting to the point where he doesn't want to drive in the rain at night.
I was going to bring that up from the quote that he had that you're referencing right there from January 15th, where he was talking about that. And the situation, the fourth down play that's going to continually get brought up until the freshness of the AFC Championship game has worn off, right? That fourth down situation, there's so much going on for a head coach and play caller at the time, right? So you're the head coach of the team. You've got to decide, hey, do I need to take a timeout here? Are we going to get a measurement here? What situation, like what are the Patriots showing us defensively? What personnel package do I want to have out there offensively? How do I weigh our what we do all season long going forward in these fourth and short situations from this yard marker on into the end zone versus having a backup quarterback out there and having that scenario in the back of your mind? There's so many different things that are going on in that one moment that a delegation of one particular thing, Cody, would have helped Sean Payton be the head coach in that situation, as opposed to the head coach and the offensive play caller, the chess match player going up against that New England Patriots defense in that moment. And the one thing that he could delegate in that moment is the play calling, and to say, Davis, I need you to come up with a play. I got to figure out what we're doing here. Are we getting a measurement? Why are we not getting one? Like, do I need to call a timeout? All those things that I just mentioned. And then weighing the analytics, the tendencies, the defensive look the Patriots are giving, all of that stuff, to be able to delegate that one thing to somebody else and to say, hey, you call the play here. And that allows Sean to do something that he's never done before as well, which is truly be the CEO of everything, as opposed to the CEO of everything and the play caller, right? There comes a point where you can't do everything. I'm learning this in my own personal life, Cody, very much so.
Same.
And so I think there comes a point where you have to realize, I can't do everything. I can't be in charge of building the roster. I can't be in charge of being the head coach and building the roster and calling the plays and managing the coaches and determining, hey, what music is being pumped in during the, the pregame so that it's not distracting or whatever. What's the temperature of the training? Like all these different things. I get that Sean Payton's passionate about that stuff and I love it, but this is the one thing to be able to keep a great coach who's instrumental to your young quarterback. I think this is the one thing, if he's ever going to give it up, now's the time.
You said everything that I wanted to say about the CEO approach. I think Sean, in collaboration with George Payton, I think those guys will build this team the way that Sean wants it built, right? But can you take this younger player who's got bright visions, bright minds like a Davis Webb and say, hey, I'm entrusting you this? Could you imagine if Sean is just able to just manage the game from essentially like a decision-making standpoint? Now, ultimately, right, if Davis Webb is the OC, let him call the plays. But ultimately, Sean has the final say on what they decide to do. Not necessarily, I mean, maybe from a play calling standpoint, but when it comes to big time decisions like 4th and 1, are we going for it? Sean has the ultimate say in those, where now he can pay attention to the game. He's got his assistant up in the box that helps him with the analytical stuff, whatever it may be. But you're entrusting the young guy who's garnering a lot of interest and a lot of respect around the NFL to say, hey, I'm passing this off to you. I'm going to be in your ear, though, still, right? I imagine, but maybe you're going to hand him the keys and say, you know what? She's all yours, kid. I've driven this vehicle for the last however many years, but now it's time for someone else to take care of her. Maybe that is the approach here from Sean Payton.
That's all for today's Big 3 and 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 and 30 also has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA or the Big 3 and 30 college wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 and 30 NFL.